In this video, I'm going to tell you my real world experience of participating in a HYROX event. I did HYROX in Miami in April. So it was about a year ago when I was out with some friends, and one of the friends was a husband and wife couple, and the wife had said that she was looking to do the HYROX. Her husband was doing the HYROX, my friend, they're both my friends, and she wanted to do it with a teammate, and for some reason, the teammate that she had selected was unable to do it. So she asked, would I be interested in it? And truth be told, I never heard of what HYROX was. I had no idea what kind of event it was. And then she told me it was kind of like a little bit like CrossFit, but different exercises. And you just had to run and do an exercise and then run again. So it didn't really sound like that really hard of an event. You know, I work out 6 days a week. I've done CrossFit before. I do jujitsu 2-3 days a week. So I keep myself in pretty good shape. So I thought to myself, how hard could this be? So without knowing anything about what it is, I said, sure, I'll do it with you. Sounds good. A little fitness event. So it was, I would say that was around November, and the event wasn't till April. So I said, not only was it going to be not that big of a deal, but had quite a few months to train and prepare. We started doing some workouts at the track where we were doing, 400, 800, sometimes 600, sometimes 500 intervals that her husband was putting together for the three of us. So the three of us would meet at the track, and then there would be other mornings in which we would go to a CrossFit type gym and do different exercises that were part of this HYROX event. During this time, we were actually training. I was training with her husband, who was training for the men's pro event. So I was using all the weights that he had to use for the pro. I discovered during this time that the weights that I would have to use doing mixed doubles, doing the event with his wife, would be quite a bit less. However, because I was training with him, I decided I'm going to use the heavier weights, the heavier wall ball, heavier sled, heavier farmer's carry, you name it. I was going to use the weights that he was training with because I was doing the workouts with him. Sometimes his wife would show up and she would just kind of use lower weights, but mainly it was him and I just going at 5 a.m. going at the workouts with his weights. So by the time the actual race came around, and it was in this time shortly thereafter that I was also starting to train for Ironman. So I started to do a little bit of some pool work, and the running was great because I was going to need to run a little bit, but this was a different kind of running, not marathon training for an Ironman after you've swam 2.4 miles and ridden a bike 112. This was, I definitely knew, was a higher intensity run. You're doing a 1K run in between these exercises. So I didn't have any issues with the running at all. We did some hard running workouts at the track. I was more concerned about things like the sled push, the burpee broad jumps, the sandbag lunges. So I was more concerned about these exercises. So during my 5 a.m. workouts with her husband, I was really focusing on performance in these workouts. Yeah, I was in shape, and yeah, I could do them, but my focus was I want to be able to do these really well and do them fast. So the day of the event came, and now we'd been training together for 5-6 months, and it was not something where I was worried about how am I going to finish. Of course, there was no concern in my mind. Okay, are we going to finish this or not? There was no concern that we were going to finish. And for the record, his wife is in phenomenal shape. She's an absolute beast, an animal. So I had a good partner as well. We had, for the weeks leading up to the HYROX Miami, we did some meetings where we kind of went over strategy, and we all met, the three of us, because he was sharing his insights from what he was learning on training for his men's pro, and we were sharing our insights of what we were thinking about doing for the mixed doubles. So it was good. We kind of put all of our minds together to come up with a good strategy for our mixed doubles. The day came, we were ready. We didn't go till about mid-afternoon, and his event wasn't until the evening. So that was something that we had to adjust for, because most of our workouts that we were doing together, whether it was for the stations or for the running, were in the early morning hours. We weren't doing late afternoon workouts. So right off the bat, our bodies were in a different mode to work out and train. I'm always doing my workouts in the morning. Seldom do I train late in the day. Got there. HYROX Miami was an incredible venue. At the time, I believe we were being told that it was the largest HYROX to date. I believe they said there were 7,500 people there. By now, by the time I'm doing this video, I believe that has been surpassed, in North America by quite a bit. But 7,500 people, huge event, and they were doing it all in one day. I'm told now that they break up some of these events into 2 days, which makes it so people aren't going so late at night. Got there, was ready, did the fueling the way I was, preparing for my, during the training, and felt good, felt really good, warmed up, did a good warm up. They have a great warm up area, and it was just a good crowd, a good vibe, a good energy. And of course, it was great to see all these people who are super fit and taking care of their bodies and, dedicating this much time toward fitness. So the whole vibe was great. The other good thing that I want to mention that I saw a lot of teams, doubles, but some were father and son, some were mother and daughter, some were siblings. And we saw a lot of this, and it was great because you could see it was also a family event. It was awesome to see families there together who had trained for this together, and now they were there to compete together. The other thing I noticed was I saw a lot of people who were just really relaxed. They were coming to have fun. Some people, of course, were very serious, but I saw a lot of, especially these families. But then I saw, you could tell, two girls were going together, and they were just friends. And I talked to a bunch of people. They were just friends, and they just wanted to do this together and have this event. They had their matching T-shirts, and they weren't really worried about the time per se. They just wanted to go out there and have fun and do it, which was awesome to see. So I did want to let that be known for anyone who's thinking maybe, this is for elite athlete people or, crazy CrossFit people. Actually, no, there was quite a number of people. I don't want to say normal people, but people who were just look like average everyday people who were there to do this event and have a good time. So if you're one of those people and you're wondering, don't worry, it's complete. It's a family event. It's a great event and lots of amazing people there. So, we had our plan of how we were going to go with our pace for the runs, and then also how we were going to do each station, what the split was going to be. What the split was going to be on the ski erg, what the split was going to be on the different stations. That plan we stuck to, I would say, roughly 30%. For the record, we were looking to be competitive. We wanted to post a good time. She had some people that she was training with that had done mixed doubles that had posted times of, I think, 1:09, an hour and 9 minutes, or an hour and 12 minutes. And you said, okay, we want to beat that. So in my mind, I was very confident that we would be under 1:30. In my mind, I was like, we get an hour and a half. Now, to her, she said, well, we're going to be able to do well under 1:30. We would probably be able to do 1:15, and I think maybe her super secret goal was 1:10. But in my mind, 1:15 would have been okay. That's a good run. And it was my first time doing it, and I believe it was her first time doing it. So went out there. Opening run. The starting line was great. It was electric. There was a countdown. Everyone was hyped up. We were right in front, so it was a really cool setup. And let me tell you, the logistics they have put together for this are unbelievable. It was done very, very well. Starting, we go off. First loop we did, and it was as planned. We had a moderate pace, and we kept that pace and got to the first station. Right after the first station, that next run, so this is run number 2, is when I realized something was off. Probably because the adrenaline and my heart rate was up because of, just the excitement of being there. But I could tell that already how good my legs felt on some of our really hard training runs. My legs weren't feeling the same way. So I said, okay, it's probably nerves and excitement, things like that. So went through the stations. And of course, there were some issues at some of the stations. Let's say for, the sled pull. She was having a hard time moving the sled on the sled pull. She's really little. She's little. She's strong, but she's little. So essentially, I almost did all of the sled pull. She jumped in here and there for a couple of little pulls, but the sled really wasn't moving that much. So I essentially just hand over hand pulled the sled back and forth for almost the entirety of it, maybe let's say 90% of it. And I know she felt bad, but she made up in a lot of other stations. Some of the stations where my legs were really not underneath me, which brings me to the point where, and I'm not gonna, I'll do a separate video about the detailed station by station because people want to ask about that as a first timer. What I didn't properly train for was training the runs while my legs were fatigued. We were training running on specific days, and those mornings at the track, we just did running workouts. Whether and her husband would set up the intervals. He had downloaded something from some HYROX coach. So we were doing those workouts to the T. It was unbelievable. And I felt like as a runner, I was almost in the best running shape of my life. It was awesome, awesome work. But never during those 5 or 6 months of training did we ever do workouts, the running workouts, after our legs were fatigued. And he called it compromised running. And I just never thought that it was going to have the exercises, which we were training for 3 days a week, pretty hard. And we did some light runs during those workouts, but it was nothing compared to what happened on race day, where I think you're just pushing yourself a little bit more. You have that adrenaline. And let me tell you, I would say by the third station, went out and we're trying to do the run, and my legs felt like they were each 200 pounds. And I knew, I was like, okay, this is a problem. So just continued through the stations, trying to just get through them. Did well on the stations. We didn't have any station where we took forever per se. And I think of course our longest station was wall balls. And I did a majority of the wall balls because she was just not comfortable doing the wall ball. She didn't feel like she was good at it. She was always nervous she was going to drop the ball, things like that. So once again, for wall balls, I don't want to say I did the majority. I did the majority, but she did quite a bit too, but I definitely did more. And she kind of just jumped in to spell me a little bit. And, so I would go for, I think I did like 30 or 35, and then she hopped in for 10, and then I went back out and did another 30 or 35 or something like that, and then she came back in for a few. So we did it like that. But I would say the wall balls took the longest, and once again I'll go over that in a whole separate video as far as station by station. And then we got done. We crossed the finish line. As soon as I crossed the finish line, I realized the failure of our training. I think we crossed the finish line, and I'll post a photo. I have it somewhere. I'll have the team edit it in. I think it was 1 hour and 23, which still is not a bad time for HYROX. However, I know between her fitness level and my fitness level, we had the ability to go much faster. The limiting factor during that race was me and my legs not wanting to turn over in those runs. She was like a rabbit. She was just out there running. And one of the things you got to be mindful of if you're doing doubles is you can't be running too far ahead of your partner, because each of you is wearing a timing chip and you can get penalized for being too far ahead of your partner. So you kind of got to run in proximity. It's okay for one person to be a little bit ahead of the other, but you can't be so far ahead. And we were at the cusp of that a couple of times, so I was a little worried about that. So I was the limiting factor there. What I discovered at the end, after that race was over, and thinking back of the training, was this HYROX is not about the actual exercises, the 8 exercises in between the runs. I went in thinking of it as the focus was on these exercises, these 8 stations. But the reality is the focus is the run. The run is where you either make or break your HYROX. And I went into it completely backwards. I should have, if I could do the training over again, and another video is coming out on that, whether I will be, I would have focused more not just on running, but compromised running. And that would be almost my sole focus. Because if you can master compromised running, yes, you have to have a solid running base, which we all had. But if you can master the compromised running, meaning keeping that solid pace after your legs have done the exercises. Now, one of the things I realized was I was pushing way too hard during the exercises. And maybe if I eased up a little bit, our times would have been a little bit higher for that station. However, our times would have been substantially better on the runs. So those are those little things that I realized after the fact. So compromised running, for one, is what I would change and implement straight away into the training. And two, less focus on the stations themselves. If you're in decent shape, you're going to be able to get through the stations. Yeah, you got to have some strength to move the sled and things like that. But, sandbag lunges, burpee broad jumps, you can get through it. And what I realized was the times of the mixed doubles, let's say, comparing apples to apples, of the people who came in first place in our age group or division, whatever, the station times were not that different. It was the run times. Their run times were all better than ours, and better by a minute and a half. Toward the ends, almost 2 minutes. So that is where all the time was lost. So now I realize HYROX is a running event. I went into it thinking it's a fitness event for these stations. HYROX is a running event, and it's a running event where you have to be very, very well versed and prepared for compromised running. If you are, you will do very, very well. If you go in there thinking, I'm just going to focus on blasting out these stations and then start jogging the runs slowly, which we saw. There was a lot of people that we saw them during the stations, and they were crushing the stations, but then they were walking the 1K because they were just so shot from the stations. They had no gas in the tank, and their legs weren't there for the run. We weren't quite that bad because we were trying to balance out a little bit, especially after the first couple stations, but it was still bad. It was to the point where I was slow jog, moderate jog, when I should have been like our training at the track days, just, ripping through the runs. Not a full sprint, but a solid pace was not happening at all. So that's a lesson. So good experience. I feel like in the beginning I told my partner, I feel like I got bamboozled into this thing because I didn't know what it was. She was like, oh, it's just like a little fitness event. It's fun. It's just like, it'll take like an hour and, it's good. And just got to do some stations and some running. So kind of got bamboozled there a little bit, but not upset about it at all. But definitely was an eye-opening experience. The good thing was the training put me into some of the best shape of my life, and the event itself was absolutely amazing. It was electric. It was so much fun. Met some great people, and it's just a good community. I think it was a good community. Very different, and I'm not knocking anything, but very different from the CrossFit community. I did CrossFit. I was into CrossFit years ago, and this was a whole different feel, a whole different vibe, and I can get into that in a different video as well. But just so you know, that's just not my feeling. If you talk to a lot of people, you'll see the overwhelming sentiment is that the HYROX community is very different than the CrossFit community. I can't quite put my finger on what it is, but anyone you talk to will tell you the same thing. It's just different and has a different feel. So those wondering, yeah. So got bamboozled into this thing, did it. We did okay, but we definitely want to do better. So we are now contemplating HYROX Miami 2026, and we're going to see if we can make another run at it. So that's it. So I'm going to go in a separate video, talk about each station and how it went for me as a first-timer, just because there weren't a lot of videos when I was doing my research. There weren't a lot of videos out there by someone who actually went through it. There was a lot of coaches' videos. I saw a lot of videos by coaches that were telling you how to perform each exercise optimally and things like that. But there weren't a lot of videos of like actually what happens in that station, what went down, what are some of the things that can happen, go wrong, things like that. So I'm going to do a separate video on that. If you have any questions about HYROX in general or my experience doing it, just drop a comment below. And if you want to follow along on my HYROX training journey, you could follow along on Instagram. I'll drop that below as well. Please comment, share, all that stuff. And if you like it. And of course, if you find this content helpful, give me a subscribe. It really helps the channel, and I truly appreciate it. If not, then that's okay too. Appreciate you. Thanks a lot for watching. And if you're preparing for a HYROX yourself, drop the comment. Let me know which one you're preparing for, whether it's domestic or abroad, and let me know what you're doing for your training. And look forward to seeing you out there. Take care.